Day 16 of Browns camp ended with a question nobody in Berea wants to answer honestly. And that question is simple. If Shedeur Sanders is about to start his first real NFL game, why does it still feel like the organization is protecting the answer to who he'll be throwing to? Let me back up, because there's a lot to get through here, and every piece of it connects to the next. Shedeur wrapped his 16th day of camp today, and for the first time all summer, the storyline stopped being purely about him versus Deshaun Watson. It widened. Travis Hunter is now part of this conversation. And honestly, he probably should have been part of it from the beginning. When Hunter was asked about the possibility of lining up across from his old Colorado teammate in a real NFL matchup, he didn't hype it up the way you'd expect a guy to hype up a reunion like that. He kept it businesslike, said they hadn't really talked about it. That Shedeur's still his brother, but that when the ball's live, it's live. Both of them have jobs to do. Hunter's not trying to hand anybody a win because of history, and neither is Shedeur. That's the mentality of two guys who know exactly how much this league chews up sentimentality. And here's the thing that got me. Hunter admitted he hasn't even locked down a starting role yet in Jacksonville. So all of this is still hypothetical on his side of the ball. But he lit up a little when he was asked if he was excited to eventually see Shedeur across the field. No hesitation there. He said yes, and you could hear it. There's real affection between these two. The kind that gets set aside for exactly 60 minutes on a Sunday, and then comes right back afterward. He also brought up Shiloh, Shedeur's brother, and it was almost a throwaway line, but it stuck with me. Hunter said he wished he could play against Shiloh too, and it's a reminder that Shiloh's path through this league has been rockier, and that not every Sanders brother is walking into a starting job the way Shedeur appears to be. Think about what that Colorado backfield produced. 3 guys who grew up in the same football family, in the same building, running the same drills against each other, before any of them ever put on an NFL uniform. Now, one of them is a projected top corner in Jacksonville. One of them is fighting to keep a roster spot. And one of them is on the verge of starting for a franchise that hasn't had a settled answer at quarterback since Baker Mayfield walked out the door. That's not just a nice storyline for a broadcast graphic. That's a genuine college friendship about to get tested by a business that doesn't care about any of it once the whistle blows. And that's exactly why Hunter's answer mattered so much to me. He didn't oversell it. He didn't turn it into a marketing moment. He gave you the honest answer of a competitor who respects the guy across from him, but isn't going to pretend the relationship changes anything about how hard he's coming off the ball. That's the right answer. That's the mature answer. And it tells you something about how Shedeur is going to be approached around the league too. Because if his own college teammate is already bracing for a real fight, you can bet defensive coordinators across the AFC are studying him the same way. Now, here's where the tension in Cleveland actually lives. Shedeur is expected to start the preseason finale against Buffalo. That part isn't really in question anymore. What is in question, and what should be bothering every single Browns fan paying attention, is who's going to be on the field with him when he does it. Today, during team drills, it was Deshaun Watson getting reps with the starting offense. Shedeur was working with the second unit. On paper, that sounds like standard preseason rotation. In practice, when you connect it to who might actually dress for the Buffalo game, it starts to look like something else entirely. And here's the wrinkle that makes this whole thing so frustrating to watch unfold. Coach Kevin Stefanski confirmed that rookie Dillon Gabriel is also going to see snaps in that preseason finale. Because the staff simply doesn't have enough practice reps built up for him, yet to feel comfortable. Fine, that's a normal camp management decision on its own. But stack it next to everything else happening around Shedeur's start, and you start to see a pattern of a coaching staff that's managing outcomes as much as it's managing a competition. You don't get a real evaluation of a starter if the guy under center is sharing snaps with a rookie who's still getting acclimated. And you don't get a real evaluation if half his intended targets are standing on the sideline in street clothes. Some of the guys lining up with Shedeur today in that second-team look might genuinely end up next to him against Buffalo. If that's the case, I want to be straight with you. That's going to bother me more than almost anything else I've covered from this camp. Not because those backups don't deserve reps. They do. But because there's a difference between a rookie earning his shot with the players who are actually going to be on the field with him in the regular season, and a rookie being quietly set up to fail so the front office can point to a rough final preseason outing as justification for a decision that, according to people inside the building, was already made months ago. Because here's what's being floated around the building right now. There's real concern that when Shedeur gets his start, he might not have Cedric Tillman. He might not have Jerry Jeudy, and reports point to Denzel Boston and Isaiah Bond potentially sitting as well. If that ends up being true, I need you to sit with that for a second, because it changes everything about how we should be judging this competition. A former front office voice, Andrew Berry's old personnel guy, weighed in and basically said the writing might already be on the wall. He pointed out that Deshaun got his run with the ones already, and if the front office isn't rolling out the starting group for Shedeur, then what exactly is he supposed to prove? His logic was blunt. At this point, the only real remaining opportunity is a joint practice. And joint practice reps get split. You can't flip a quarterback competition in half a practice against air. He even said he believes this decision has quietly been made since February or March, long before a single training camp rep was thrown. But he also raised something sharper, something that deserves more attention than it's gotten. He wants an honest gut check on what Deshaun did against Chicago's backups compared to what he's shown against actual starting caliber corners, pass rushers, and linebackers in practice. Because there's a real gap between torching a team that pulled its starters and holding up against players who are actually trying to take your head off. That distinction matters. And it's the kind of distinction the Browns coaching staff either respects or conveniently ignores, depending on which quarterback they're protecting. I'm going to say the part that a lot of people around this situation can't say out loud. If Shedeur doesn't get the same weapons Deshaun had in his outing against the Bears, this isn't a competition anymore. Calling it one at that point is just for optics. Give the guy the same firepower. Give him the same receivers, the same protection, the same real chance. If the organization is scared to hand Shedeur that ammunition, that tells you everything about what they think he'd do with it. You don't hide bullets from a guy you think can't shoot straight. You hide them from a guy you're worried is going to hit the target. Look at it from a pure roster-building lens for a second, stripped of all the emotion. Every front office in this league understands that preseason performance gets read differently, depending on who's on the field. If Watson lit up Chicago's backups with starters around him, and Shedeur is expected to face Buffalo's actual scheme with a watered-down supporting cast, any objective evaluator has to weight those numbers completely differently. A quarterback's completion percentage means something different when his top 3 targets are also his blocking tight end's backup, and a practice squad body who signed 2 weeks ago. If Cleveland's decision-makers know that, and they do, then setting Shedeur up in that environment isn't neutral. It's a choice. And choices like that usually get made by people who already know which way they want this to land. That's not me accusing anyone of sabotage. Front offices protect their own decisions all the time, in every sport, in every business. But protecting a decision and running a fair competition can't both be true at the same time. Pick one. Now, on the practice field itself, today was one of Shedeur's better days, and it wasn't close. Browns reporters on the ground were raving about his ball placement in a way I haven't heard all camp. There was a slot fade to the right side that people are calling the best throw of the entire summer for him. The defense overloaded pressure on one side, showed blitz, brought it, and Shedeur read it instantly, delivered a strike to Gage Larvadain in stride. That's not a rookie read. That's the kind of anticipation throw that shows up on cut-ups when scouts are building a case for a guy. There was another one to Luke Farrell on a dig route that was tough to track live, but looked clean on the end zone replay. Tight window, good timing. And there was a play where the protection broke down, and instead of forcing something, Shedeur bailed out of the pocket, extended the play, and just took what the defense gave him. That's a maturity marker. Rookies panic in that spot. He didn't. There was also a completion to Jamari Thrash on what looked like a designed clear-out concept over the middle. The kind of route combination that only works if the quarterback trusts his protection long enough to let it develop. He trusted it. The ball got there before the window closed. And, on top of all that, Receiver Luke Floria, who's been quietly climbing this depth chart all camp after getting first-team reps just yesterday, is starting to look like a real chemistry piece for Shedeur specifically. When a quarterback and a receiver start finding each other on option routes and back shoulder throws in live team periods, that's not luck. That's rep-built trust. And it's exactly the kind of connection that shows up on Sundays when a play breaks down and both guys know where the other one's going to be, without a word said. None of this happened against air, either. It's worth pointing out that Cleveland's defense has been the story of this entire camp, not the offense. Defensive players have been dominating these 11-on-11 sessions for weeks now, forcing bad decisions, blowing up designed runs, disguising coverages well enough to bait mistakes out of both quarterbacks. So when Shedeur finds the right window against a defense that's been eating alive everyone else in that building, that carries real weight. It's not a case of a rookie padding stats against a tired scout unit. It's a case of a rookie solving a genuinely difficult look in real time. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ball, Deshaun Watson had a moment against the actual starting defense that should worry Cleveland more than it seems to be worrying them publicly. He tried to push one downfield, tried to squeeze one into tight coverage, and Denzel Ward had both hands on that football. It wasn't ruled an interception, but make no mistake, Watson got away with one. If Ward finishes that play, and defensive backs at that level usually do, we're having a completely different conversation about this quarterback room today. He did connect on a short hitch to Isaiah Bond. Clean and unremarkable, exactly what that route is designed to be. And there was a touchdown on a play-action shot to Bond that had people split on whether it should have even counted. Some in the building thought Watson took a sack before the ball came out. The officials flagged something on the play, and nobody's fully sure why. That kind of muddiness follows Watson's practice reps more than it should for a guy who's supposedly locked in as QB1. The unofficial depth chart still lists it as a battle between the two names, but depth charts are political documents. They tell you what a team wants you to believe, not necessarily what's already been decided in a meeting room somewhere in Berea. And look, I get why the coaching staff wants to keep the public messaging neutral. You don't want to hand your rookie starter a target on his back before he's played a real snap, and you don't want to publicly bury a veteran you might still need if things go sideways. That's smart optics. But optics and truth aren't the same thing, and the people who actually work inside that building, the ones talking to reporters off the record, the ones who've watched every single practice period since OTAs, keep landing on the same conclusion. This thing isn't as open as the depth chart wants you to believe. Then, Bernie Kosar said something today that cut through all of it. Kosar, a guy who threw touchdowns for this franchise back when the Browns actually mattered in January, basically said he's done pretending this is complicated. He said, "The players want Shedeur. The fan base wants Shedeur." He wants to see Shedeur out there in Week 1 against Jacksonville, in a matchup against Travis Hunter that writes itself as a storyline. And he didn't hedge it. He explained why too. It's not blind loyalty to a rookie. It's about what Shedeur represents in that locker room. Guys respond to him. He's been genuinely present in the community, working with kids, showing up in ways that aren't performative. Kosar made the point that when you're the guy, you get to lead differently. You get more grace to correct guys, to coach them up, to demand accountability, because they already believe in you. If you're fighting for the job, that dynamic doesn't exist yet. That's the piece people miss when they reduce this to a stat sheet argument. Leadership in that locker room isn't earned through a depth chart designation. It's earned through belief. And right now, it sounds like Kosar thinks that belief already belongs to Shedeur, regardless of what gets printed on a Wednesday practice report. I think what made Kosar's comments land the way they did is the fact that this isn't some outside talking head with no connection to the franchise. This is a guy who played quarterback in that same building, who understands exactly what it feels like to have an entire city's emotional investment riding on your right arm every single Sunday. When someone with that background tells you the noise around the competition has become exhausting and that the answer everyone already knows deserves to just be said out loud, that carries a different kind of weight than a hot take from a studio desk. It's someone from inside the fraternity breaking form to say what a lot of former players are almost certainly thinking privately. And it's not just Kosar. The sentiment inside that locker room, from what's being described, is trending the same direction. Players respond to energy, and Shedeur brings a specific kind of it, poised under pressure, generous with his time in the community, unbothered by the volume of attention that's followed him since draft night. That combination is rare for a rookie. Most young quarterbacks either shrink from that spotlight or let it change how they carry themselves. By all accounts, Shedeur hasn't done either. So where does that leave this? Shedeur starts against Buffalo. That part's settled. What's not settled is whether the Browns are going to give him a fair environment to close this thing out, or whether they're going to quietly strip the weapons away and let this competition die of natural causes instead of an honest evaluation. If Cedric Tillman sits, if Judy sits, if this becomes Shedeur running with a scout team supporting cast against a defense that isn't holding back, and the front office turns around afterward and says the numbers didn't justify a switch, that's not evaluation. That's a predetermined outcome wearing a competition's clothing. I'll be watching that lineup sheet closer than almost anything else this preseason. Because if the story here really is that this decision got made back in the winter, then everything happening on that practice field right now, every good throw, every sharp read, every rep Shedeur's earning with backups is theater. And Cleveland deserves better than theater at the most important position on the roster.